Hi everyone, welcome back to another session of Fast Track Advanced Penetration Testing Fundamentals. And in the earlier session, we discussed about many things related to the penetration testing, its methodologies, and the types of penetration testing. Then we discussed about the OSINT, the open source intelligence, what are the different ways where you can find out information about people and organization. Now, today's agenda for us is learning about the exploit framework, which we know as by the name Metasploit framework. That what is Metasploit framework, how we use it, what are the different ways to use it, and what are the different types of modules it uses, right? Then we'll see the working of multi-handler, how multi-handler works, how you get the session, the Meterpreter session, how you exploit any vulnerability and get the access of the target machine. So that's our agenda for today. And the very first thing that we should know is Metasploit framework. So when we talk about Metasploit framework, right? So Metasploit is developed by Rapid7, right? And it is an open source penetration testing framework which allows the security professionals to assess and exploit the vulnerabilities in computer system. It's dynamic and it's a evolving project. That means dynamic means it keeps on changing. The number of exploits, they keep on changing, they keep on uh, adding more exploits to it, more modules to it, right? And it plays a very important role in ethical hacking and cybersecurity research, right? When we talk about Metasploit framework, so it started in 2003, right? Its founder was HD Moore, and he unleashed this potent tool into the cybersecurity, right? Since then it has evolved significantly, and now it's uh, it's a very big community of contributors, and there are lots of people who have extensive library of exploits, right? Now there are multiple modules in Metasploit framework, but you should know how it works. So when we talk about the Metasploit framework, guys, if you know, whenever we do hacking, we follow some steps of hacking, right? The information gathering, yes, reconnaissance, which we call. Then you do the scanning, right? Enumeration, then system hacking, and then covering the tracks. Yes, everyone agrees. These are the general steps. Now, depending on the uh, different methodologies, it's the names are different, but this is the general methodology. Yes, general steps that you should follow. Now, in reconnaissance, what you do? You find out the information about the target. You find out how, what are the different domains, subdomains, what are the network IPs of that target, right? Then you do the scanning. What is scanning and what you do in scanning? So, what we do, we find out open ports, the services running on those ports, the service version, the operating system of the target machine. Once we are done with that, then we will run some scripts on the target machine to find out more results, to find out if there is any username and password present, right? We'll do brute force to find out username and password, right? Different types of attacks. Then we'll also try to do multiple attacks, right? So we will find out more information in the enumeration phase, right? Now in enumeration phase, we are directly communicating with the machine, with the target device which we are hacking. We are sending some data, it's replying back, and according to that we are saying that yes, if it is vulnerable or not, or what services are vulnerable, everything. Then after that, once you found that which service is vulnerable, you will exploit those services, right, in the system hacking phase. And after exploiting the services, whatever your goals were. Let's say you wanted to steal some data, so you stole the data and then you deleted everything from the system, whatever tools you have installed, whatever logs were created, everything, right? So Metasploit framework can also work like that, right? So it can do reconnaissance, it can help you in doing scanning, it can help you in gaining access, it can help you in maintaining the access as well, right? What is the meaning of maintaining access? Maintaining access means, let's say I asked you to hack my system, you hacked it, right? Now, how you hacked, you found that my RDP was open, remote desktop protocol. You took the remote desktop access of my system, and the username and password was default, right? Like say admin and admin. But what if tomorrow I change the password? If I change the password, you won't be able to get the access of it. Yes, you won't be having access of my system. So maintaining access means you will install other backdoors, other trojans into my system so that you get access of my system from different ways, from different paths, right? Perfect. Now, when we are talking about Metasploit framework, so it's been a game changer, right? It has uncovered vulnerabilities in multiple systems, and uh, it's a like used to improve security measures and awareness, right? So, the ethical use of such technology is very important to highlight, right? So, if we are using it ethically, we are penetration testers, but there are attackers as well who are writing their own codes and who are using Metasploit framework, right? So, that's why it's very dangerous also if it goes into some bad people hands, right? So when we are talking about now Metasploit framework, right? So that's what Metasploit framework is, but how it looks like, right? So this is the architecture of Metasploit framework. Have you ever seen it before? Yes. Now, the thing is, in this framework, what you have to understand is there are different libraries being used, right? There are extensions of Ruby being used, right? So, Metasploit, it uses different libraries, right? And those libraries are the key to proper functioning of the framework. And what are libraries? What are those libraries? Libraries means they are a collection of tasks, predefined tasks, right? Or some operations or some functions which can be used by different modules of the framework, right? Now, the most fundamental part of this framework is the Rex library. Can you see here it's written Rex? So this Rex library is the most important part, right? Now, some of the components which are provided by Rex, what are those? There is a wrapper socket subsystem, right? It Rex also does the implementation of protocols, clients and servers, right? Then a subsystem which does the logging, right? Then exploitation utility classes, and there are multiple classes that it gives you, right? So Rex, it stands for Ruby extension, and it is designed to have no dependencies other than what comes with the default Ruby installation, right? Then you have MSF core as well, right? This MSF core library extends risk, right? So core is what it does. It implements all the required interfaces that allow for interacting with exploit modules, the sessions, and all the plugins. So there is a module manager, there is a session manager, there is a plugin manager, there is framework as well. event dispatcher, and data store also, right? Then there is base library. Can you see here? It's small, but it's written MSF base. So this core framework, right? It is extended by base library, and base library is used to provide utility classes, right? So that, let's say, you want to serialize a module state to different output format, right? You want to find out different outputs, right? Then which is used? The base is used, right? And base library is extended by the user interface, which is at the bottom, MSF UI, this one, right? Now this implements the support for different types of UIs in the framework, right? There is a web interface as well, there is a command console, there is a GUI as well, right? So who is giving that? This MSF UI, right? Mainly, there are two different UIs which are provided with the framework. One is MSF console that you write, and one is web interface, right? Now, the best one, which one is the best? So when we talk about from the perspective of me, from the perspective of ethical hackers, so this MSF console, the CLI part, it provides the best support for the framework, right? You can use all the functionalities, and you can get everything by small commands. You don't have to look inside GUI and click it here and there and every other place. So that's the best thing about this framework, right? Now, if I show you the Metasploit framework, let's see. Now let's first check in the GUI where it is. So you have the file system, right? Inside file system, you will go to the directory user. Inside user, there will be a directory with the name share, and here you will search for Metasploit framework. So this is the directory of Metasploit framework, right? Now this is, if we talk about the Metasploit file system. So that file system, it is laid out in a very intuitive manner, right? And it is organized by directory, right? So you can see data directory here, right? Now this data directory, it contains editable files which can be used by Metasploit to store binaries which you need for different exploits, where you need word list or images, right? So all those things you need, they are here, right? For evasion, auxiliaries, right? Headers are there for PHP if you want, exploit shell codes you want, word lists you want when you want to do the exploitation. So then this data directory can help, right? Then there is documentation directory. Now, as the name suggests, documentation directory, what it contains? Documentation for the framework. So if you want to read about the Metasploit framework, so you can go to this directory, right? So what it has, like developers guide. So the people who developed it, they have written a documentation. So you can read that, how it was developed, what are the things in it, right? Then the contributions and everything, right? Then there is lib directory for libraries, right? So I can say this directory contains the main part of this framework code base, right? This is, I will say, the meat of this framework's code base, right? So you can see Metasploit, you have MSF, right? Postgres. So it uses the database. The database is Postgre, right? MySQL, Ruby is there, right? So you can see many things. These are the things which are running behind this Metasploit framework, right? And then there is a directory with the name modules. Now these modules where you will find out actual modules for exploit, auxiliary, post, payloads, encoders, nops, right? So these are the things present in the Metasploit framework. Once you start, so at the top, these module names are written. I'll show you how we can use the modules, right? Just describing you the directories. Then next is plugins. Now, if I talk about this plugins directory, what are these plugins, right? So there are lots of plugins, right? There will be a plugin for PCAP for packet capturing. There will be a plugin for session notifier, right? There will be a plugin for socket, right? So multiple plugins will be there. Now these plugins will be used while the framework is running. Let's say you want to use you want to capture any data in the network, right? While the data is traveling, you want to capture that inside Metasploit framework. Outside Metasploit framework we have done, but inside Metasploit framework if you want to do, then you can do it with the help of plugins. So there are plugins present, right? Then there is a full directory with the name scripts, right? So it contains different scripts for different modules. Like there is Meterpreter. So Meterpreter scripts are present. Meterpreter is what? It is a payload, right? In Metasploit framework. So its scripts are there, right? Other console scripts are there. Then there are tools. So if you want to use any command line tools or command line utilities, right? Then these tools are there, right? So that is your Metasploit framework, right? Perfect. Now, if you want to start Metasploit framework, so the command is msf console, right? This is one way of starting the Metasploit framework, right? This framework will give you the list of modules. You can use all those modules and do the exploitation. So as you can see, it says starting the Metasploit framework, and this is the framework, right? So it gives you a banner. So this is the banner which you can see. Now banner can be changed. You can just write here banner command and banner will be changed, right? So here another banner it gives, right? Now apart from banner, it gives you the modules. These are the name of every module that Metasploit framework has. Now how you will use these modules? So that we'll discover, right? So this is the architecture of Metasploit framework. Now next we'll talk about the modules, all the modules of Metasploit framework, that what are those, how do they work and everything, right? So these are the modules. We have exploit, we have payload, then post, we have auxiliary, we have encoders, we have listeners, we have nops, right? What they do actually, right? And how they work, right? So for that, we should know that when we are talking about these modules, these are just piece of code that will execute and either exploit a vulnerability or find out information from the target. Now, the very first one is exploit, right? Now, when we are talking about exploit, what do you understand by the word exploit? Great. Taking advantage, gaining access. Exploit means taking advantage of a vulnerability, right? Now, when we are talking about the exploit module, it helps you in taking advantage of the vulnerability, right? That means it is a piece of code which will get executed and it will exploit a vulnerability, give you the access of the system. Now, there are two types of exploits: active exploits and passive exploits. Can you see? When we are talking about active exploits, getting access remotely, okay. So, when we talk about active exploit, it means it will exploit the vulnerability in a specific device and it will run until the completion of the code and then it will exit, right? That means, let's say I'm using a brute force module. When a shell opens for the from the victim, let's say when I get the connection, I gave 100 usernames, 100 passwords, right? So if I'm doing a brute force attack, that means I'm trying the combinations of username and password in the target machine. So once I get the access of the system and once the correct username and password is entered, it will exit, right? That exploit will exit, right? That's active exploit. So it will exploit a specific host, not everything, right? Then when we talk about passive exploits, what are passive exploits? Passive exploit means, see, we did reconnaissance, we did information gathering, right? So there are two types of information gathering: active and passive. In active, what we are doing, we are directly communicating with the target and finding out the information. Passively means from I'm not connecting directly to the target, but from different passive sources, I'm trying to find out the information, right? So same like that in passive exploits, what happens, we as the attacker, our machine as the attacking machine, will wait for incoming host, right? And once those devices they connect to my machine, right, we call it reverse connection as well, right? Once that machine come back to us for connection, right, we will exploit them, right? Now it can be one, it can be two, it can be more than two machines. Passive exploit means reverse TCP connection, right? What I'm doing, I sent a exploit, right? This is my machine and this is my target machine, right? Now here what I did, I opened a port number 1234, right? Now I'm waiting for the target machine to connect to me, connect back to me, right? Once this target machine connects back to me, then I will exploit the vulnerability, then I will send an exploit code, right? That's the meaning of passive exploit. Next module is payload. Now, how will you define payload? In the terms of networking, we call payload something which uh, you are sending. Like, let's say I'm sending some data that, hello, how are you? I'm sending a message. That's a payload. But in terms of Metasploit framework, in terms of security, what is a payload? So, when we are talking about payload, in simple terms, in layman terms, payload is something which supports your exploit, right? And in technical terms, payload is the code that we want the system to execute, and it has to be selected and delivered by the framework. Payload In Metasploit, it is an exploit module, right? Now there are three different types of payload modules in Metasploit framework. What are those? We have singles, we have stagers, and we have stages, right? Now these different types, they allow versatility and you can use them in multiple scenarios, right? And we have to know that there are two types of payloads. First is staged, right? And second is non-staged. Yep. Now what does staged payload means? It means, let's say, Windows slash shell slash bind underscore TCP. And at the same time, we can write Windows slash shell underscore bind underscore TCP. Now the name is same, isn't it? The exploit code will be same. Now you, by reading the name of the exploit, these are the payloads, right? Payloads for Windows, right? So the name is starting with Windows. You got to know that it is a payload for Windows, right? That's clear. Now, when we are talking about these payloads, staged means that we are not sending the whole exploit code in a single go, right? Now, if you see this shell underscore bind underscore TCP, so this is a single payload. There is no stage. So the whole code, the whole payload code is going directly in a single go, right? Now, what are the pros of it? Now, pros are that your code will be directly delivered. Your code won't be messed up, right? Con is that the size of a payload is very big. So if you are not breaking the payload into smaller parts, then there are chances it will be detected, right? And here we are sending first the shell code and then the bind TCP code, right? So we are sending the code in stages. That means breaking the malicious, the payload code and sending it, right? Now that payload can be a Trojan as well, right? It depends what kind of attack you are doing. So if you are sending this, the staged, what can be the pros of it? Now the thing is that if we are sending the staged payload, right, there are less chances of staged payload to get detected, whether it is antivirus, whether it is IDS, IPS, or firewall, right? And what can be the cons? That once I have broken the payload code into smaller parts, in the target system, when it combines back, when all the small parts combine back, maybe they get combined not in a format as they were before, right? So let's say I was having like uh, I did four parts of my payload. I broke my payload into four parts, right? One, two, three, four, right? When I sent it and the target machine combined it, then it became 1324, right? When it got combined like it was not combined properly, right? I broke it into four parts, but those four parts were not combined properly, and my payload code is lost, or you can say it will not do what we wanted it to do. So that's a con of it. These are the types of payload. Now, when I told you there are three things in payloads, either they are single stagers or stages. So single payloads, that means, can I say they are non-staged payloads? Self-contained, standalone payload. Singles means the payloads which don't need anyone else or anything else. They are completely standalone. You just have to send them. Those are singles, right? Stagers are what? Stagers is a new word now, right? When we talk about stagers, they will set up a network connection between the attacker and the victim, and then they are very small, first thing, and very reliable. So it is difficult to do both of these, right? Either like you are also setting up a network connection between the attacker and the victim, right? And also the payload should be small and reliable, right? So these two things are very difficult to perform, right? So that's why what you do, you use multiple stagers, right? And those multiple stagers can be detected, right? Then there are stages. What are stages? These are payload components, right? So stagers, what they do, stagers will download, right? So while sending stagers, if you need more stagers, right? Let's say one stager is not working for you, you need more, right? So it will download stages, more stages, right? For let's say VNC injection, right? You are doing I iPon, right? iPhone pawn you are doing. So it will download more stages, right? Then you do the exploit, right? So these are the three types of things inside payload module. Next is, after payloads, we have post, right? Now post is what? If you see here, it's written post, right? Post is here. Now when I'm talking about post, post means post compromise modules, right? Now, post compromise module means, let's say you have exploited a vulnerability, right? And you are inside the target system, but it's a huge company, so you first you have to do the reconnaissance, internal reconnaissance or internal information gathering. Yes or no? Yes. Now, when you do internal information gathering, in that, what you find out, what you want to try, what you are trying to find out, what do you want? First thing, you need to know at what part of the network you landed, right? Let's say you hacked InfoSec train, right? So first thing you will do is you will find out which part of the network you landed, right? Let's say you landed on the system of uh, a receptionist, right? So there are no privileges or very less privileges given to the system of receptionist, right? Now you need to do internal reconnaissance to find out where the exact servers are, what is the path to reach those servers. Yes or no? So that reconnaissance modules for finding out information that is inside post. Then you will find out, let's say, active directory first, right? That where the actual active directory is, what are the machines connected directly to active directory, to the domain controller. And then you will perform some attacks to do the lateral movement. Right now, what is lateral movement? Moving laterally in the network. So you will perform some attacks. Let's say you are doing credential dumping, right? So using credential dump multiple tools, right? Either you are using kiwi, right, to do credential dumping, or you are using other tools, right? Like you are creating a C2 C2 channel, right, using Cobalt Strike. So there are multiple ways of doing that. So you will find out ways according to the environment that what attacks are working, right? And what attacks you have to do to move from this receptionist system to other systems so that you can reach the active directory, the domain controller, and take access of the whole organization, right? So these are the post modules which will be having the post compromise attacks, post compromise tools or scripts which will help you in getting more information after the compromise, right? Perfect. Then there are auxiliaries. Now what are auxiliaries? There is a step which I wrote, if you remember, enumeration. Enumeration means finding out more information about the target, right? So auxiliaries are what? Auxiliaries, they help you in doing enumeration. Yes, what they help you? They help you in doing enumeration. Now, why you want to do enumeration, right? Let's say you want to find out some information, right? Now, what information you want to find out? Uh, let's assume you want to find out information about VNC, right? Now I searched for VNC protocol 3.3 and it gave you an auxiliary. Now what kind of auxiliary it is? It's a auxiliary having scanner. So it is a scanner kind of auxiliary, and this auxiliary will check the login of the target VNC connection. So if a VNC port, virtual network computing port, is open inside the target machine, then it will do the authentication scanning and it will try to find out password for it. It will not log you in, it will give you the password of it, right? So that is enumeration which we are doing. Clear? Then after auxiliaries we have 45 encoders. Now what are encoders? Encoding means you are changing the data but without the use of any keys. Encryption is done using keys, the public key and the private key, but encoding is done using some predefined rules, not the keys, right? Now, when we are talking about encoders, encoders are the values or scripts which will encode your payload, right? Let's say I'm sending a virus to your system. You are using Windows. Will your Windows detect it? Windows Defender. Will it detect the virus? Yes. Now, for that, what I can do, if I want to bypass or evade those detections, right? So at that time, I can encode the payloads, encode that virus, and then send it to you. So there are chances that it will be bypassed. Those are what? Those are encoders, right? Now, a very famous encoder that is used many times, it goes by the name Shikataganai, right? Those who have worked might have heard about Shikataganai, right? So this is also an encoder, right? Then next thing, NOPs. What are NOPs, guys? Okay. Now, when we are talking about NOPs, right? So NOPs, it stands for no operations. Now, no operations, what it does exactly the same what it means. No operation means it does nothing, right? What it does nothing in terms of exploitation or let's say giving access or anything, nothing. It gives you a pause while you are doing memory based attacks, the attacks which are based of memory, right? Now memory based attack means overflow attacks like stack overflow, heap overflow, right? So buffer overflow kind of attacks you are doing. Then you need NOPs. So what they do, they give you a pause in between while you are sending your exploit code, right? So let's say, okay, you guys know how to work with Linux, right? Now let's say if I write a command id, right? And if I write another command, who am I? Will this work? Will this command work? Because id is a proper command because it will give you your unique id and group id. Who am I gives you what kind of user you are. So why it won't work? It won't work because the interpreter, right, who is interpreting this command, right, the shell, the kernel who is interpreting this command. So this is not the command. This is not a single command, correct? Second thing, there is no separator between both of these commands, right? When a command goes to the RAM, right? Every command you write goes to RAM for execution, right? So when this whole command goes for execution, RAM is not very intelligent, right? RAM is not even intelligent thing, right? What it does, its work is to load the modules, whatever commands are written by the user, you execute those commands. If that command does not exist, it does not exist, right? So RAM, I won't say it's a very powerful thing or not powerful from intelligence, right? So what happens when this command goes to RAM? RAM says, no, it's not executable. RAM cannot differentiate that these are two different commands. First thing, right? So that's why whenever you load any command to RAM, RAM is just executing it. So RAM should know that these are two different commands. So there should be a pause in between, right? These are two different commands. So that means these are two different processes. So when one process gets executed, there should be a pause. There should be a halt in between, and then the next process should execute. So that halt tells the RAM that these are two different processes. So if I add a semicolon between both of the commands, both are executed, both gave the output. Why? Because that semicolon, what it did? Nothing. For a second, for a microsecond, for a period of time, nothing happened after the ID command got executed, right? We call it as a separator, but what it did nothing for a second, and then it gave who am I. So that's why our memory, our RAM got to know that these are two different commands. Got it? So this semicolon is acting as a NOP in between, no operations. Great. So these are the techniques that you can use for evading the IDS, IPS, and firewalls, right? Bypassing of them, right? So that's evasion. Nine techniques of evasions, right? So these are all the modules of this exploit framework, which is known as Metasploit. Clear? Now, let me show you how you can take access and exploit the vulnerabilities using the Metasploit framework, right? Now, let's say, let's spin up a VM very quickly. Okay, so this is my target machine, let's say, right? I want to exploit vulnerabilities in this target machine. Now, when I want to exploit the vulnerability in the target machine, so what is the very first thing that I do? What should I do first? Enumeration. So, the thing is that I don't know the IP address of that machine, right? So, can I do enumeration directly? That's a bit difficult, right? To do that. Okay. Now, if you see this, this is GUI and this is known as Armitage. What it is called? Armitage, right? Armitage is the GUI version of Metasploit framework. Now here, the difficulty is you have to click and find out the exploits every time, right? This is the console where you can write the commands, right? And these are the devices it will show which are in your network and which are up and running basically. So if you want to use anything, let's say I want to take VNC, so give the username and password, you can take the access, right? If you want to do the attack, you can do the attack from here as well. So this is Armitage, right? The GUI version of Metasploit framework. But as I said, we only want and we only like the CLI version of Metasploit. The CLI is easy and it's very easy to learn as well, right? Now, when I'm talking about exploiting a machine, the very first thing I have to find out information about that machine and I have to find out the IP address of that machine, right? When I'm talking about finding out the IP address, so I know that the target machine is in the same network in which I'm sitting, right? Because only then I can attack. If you are in the different network, I'm in the different network, I cannot perform the attack, right? So if I'm doing the attack, I have to find out the IP first thing, and that IP I will scan. right? So I remember there was a protocol that I learned in my starting days when I was learning networks and the networking part, and that protocol is with the name ARP. Everyone might have heard about ARP, Address Resolution Protocol. Yes or no? What it does, what is the use of it? MAC to IP or IP to MAC? Now there are two answers in front of me. Out of 76 people, I can see only two answers. Okay, perfect. So it maps your IP address to MAC address, right? How it works. These are the three systems in the network, in the same network, right? A, B, and C, right? So C has an IP address, let's say 192.168.175.123, right? This is B, so 192 dot say dot 175 dot 114, right? Now A wants to send some data to C, right? So A does what? A do not have the MAC address of C, because we know, we have learned the OSI model and we know when we want to send the data should have the destination MAC address, the destination IP address as well. My device knows the IP because it is in the same network, but we don't know. My device does not have the MAC address. So what will happen? My device will send a broadcast in the network, right? Now this will be called an ARP broadcast, right? Now this is a message which is sent to all the devices in the network, and that message will be saying that anyone who is having an IP address 192.168.175.123, please reply me back with your MAC address. Now when B gets that message, right, B will say the IP written in the message is not mine. So B will not reply to that message and it will deny that this message is not intended for me. Next, C will receive it. C will check the IP written in the message and C will say, yes, this message was intended for me. And C will accept it. And then C will send reply, and that reply will be having the MAC address of C. So A will be having a table, and in that table, it will have the IP and MAC address of C, right? That's how the IP is mapped or resolved with the MAC address of a device. Perfect. Now I'll take the advantage of this protocol because for attackers, this is the only protocol which is a blessing, right? And if, believe me, guys, if I'm saying it is a blessing, so actually it is a blessing, because maximum or many protocols inside the organization, like let's say you are doing ping scan, so ping uses ICMP can be blocked inside the organization, but address resolution protocol is something which can never be blocked, and it generate like massive amount of traffic. So practically it is impossible to go through the whole traffic of ARP and find what is happening and who is doing the attack. right? So what we will do first, I will find out the IP of my system using the command ifconfig. Now the IP of my system is 192.168.175.147. That means my subnet is starting from which IP? What is the network ID of my subnet? So network ID is 192.168.175.0, right? From dot 0 it is starting until dot 255 it is going. So what I will do, I know my subnet in which subnet I am in, and the same subnet will be of the target machine as well. So I will send an ARP request, but not one single, multiple ARP request. So I will do an ARP scan to the whole subnet of mine, right? What it will do for every single IP in the whole subnet, it will send an ARP broadcast. So it will be sending a message that anyone having IP address 192.168.175 dot 1, send me your MAC address. Dot 2, send me your MAC address. Dot 3, send me your MAC address. Until 255 it will do, right? So that any IP address which is up and running, if that IP address receive the message, it will reply back. And if it is replying back, that means it is working, and that's the IP of my target machine, because only one target machine is there in my network. Getting my point or not? Yes. So for every single IP in the whole network, I am sending a message, an ARP message, that send me your MAC address. If any machine in the network replies back with its MAC address, that means it's working, and that's the IP of my target machine. If I run the scan, you can see I have multiple IPs. I got 4 IPs, but I was expecting only one IP. I got 4. Why so? The question is, I did the ARP scan and I was having one target machine, right? So only one machine is up and running in my network. When I did the ARP scan, I knew that if my one machine is up and running, so only that machine will reply back. In the output of our scan, I will get only one IP, but I'm getting 4. Why so? So the thing is, I'm working inside a virtual environment, right? So this is the IP of my network ID. This is my network ID of virtual environment. This is the broadcast IP address of my virtual environment, which is VMware. And then this is the gateway of VMware through which my Windows and VMware are connected, and my VMware or the machines inside VMware are able to get internet and access the internet. So that means out of all these four, first network IP, last one broadcast IP, second one is your gateway. So what is the IP of my target machine? 192.168.175.163. See, I'm inside the virtual environment, right? So inside virtual environment, first thing, my virtual environment has a unique network ID, right? By which its network, the network of VMware is uniquely identified, right? So it's dot one, right? Then if any machine inside VMware, any operating system inside VMware wants to broadcast the data, but to only the machines which are hosted inside, which are running inside VMware, then I'll need a separate broadcast IP address, right? So this is my broadcast IP address for it, right? And then This is the gateway through which I am able to access internet. The gateway through which my data is traveling from VMware inside to outside, right? So I got this as my target IP. Perfect. Now, once I have my target IP, what I can do is I can perform a scan, right? Now, those who know Nmap, right? In Nmap, what we can do a normal scan like this. Now, what I'm doing, I'm using a tool which is with the name Nmap. Can anyone define me this command? What is this command doing? Correct. So what I'm doing is first I've used an option hyphen V. Hyphen V is used for verbosity. That means detail. So it will give me detailed output. Hyphen N. Hyphen N is used for blocking the DNS lookup, right? So it will not do any DNS lookup for this IP. It will not try to find out domain name for this IP. Then hyphen PN will block the ping sweep. Ping sweep means what Nmap does. The behavior of Nmap says the very first thing you have to do is ping sweep, which means you have to ping every single IP in the whole subnet and find out if it is up and running or not, right? Don't you think the same thing we did with ARP scan? We were not pinging in ARP scan, but we were trying to find out if the target machine is up and running or not. On what IP, machines are up and running in our network. So we did the same thing earlier. Why to do it again, right? Using ARP scan, I found which IPs are up and running. Any IP which replied back with its MAC address is up and running, right? Same thing Nmap does in its default working, which is ping sweep. Ping sweep means pinging every IP address in the whole subnet and finding out which IP is up and running, right? So we don't want to do it again. Yes, that's why I've blocked that using hyphen PN. Hyphen SV is used for service versions, right? That if FTP is running, what version of FTP is there, right? Then hyphen SC. Hyphen SC is used for running scripts. Now let's see what are scripts. Now Nmap has what? Nmap has some inbuilt scripts inside it. Yes. Now those scripts do what? They give you, they help you in enumeration basically, right? Let's see those scripts. These are the scripts of Nmap. Lots and lots of scripts are there, right? As you can see, MySQL, SNMP, SMTP, LDAP, IRC, HTTP, multiple scripts. Now, some scripts like this, let's say HTTP title, it will give you the title of the website, right? What is the title of this domain, right? That's an information, right? Then there are some scripts which will find out vulnerabilities. So there are some well-known vulnerabilities which are associated with HTTP, right? So these scripts will do what? They will scan, they will run against the target, and then it will find out if the version of HTTP which is running inside the target is vulnerable to these exploits or not. Okay, see what these scripts do, they help you in doing enumeration. Enumeration means finding out information, right? About the target, right? So what information you can find out? Either you can find out a general information. Let's say I talked about this uh, trace route, right? That it will trace the route, it will trace the path, that how my request is going from my machine to the target. So a general information like this title. So HTTP title will give you the title of the website, right? And it can also give you information about the vulnerabilities, that if the target machine or the target website which is there, if it is vulnerable to these exploits or not. So nmap will execute these scripts for the target, and then it will tell you if the target is vulnerable to these exploits or not, these CVs. So there are different multiple CVs written, right? 2006, 9, 13, 12, 11, 15, 17. So these CVs and their proof of concept codes are there. They will get executed against the target, right? And then nmap will tell you the output that yes, the target is vulnerable, or no, the target is not vulnerable to these exploits, right? Great. Now, uh, as Mr. Gufran asked, a very nice question, that can we bypass nmap scan from firewall? Yes, Mr. Gufran, we can. There are multiple options that you can use, like hyphen f hyphen m hyphen mtu you can use, right, to bypass the nmap scan, the to bypass the firewalls and do the scan, right? Then you can limit the maximum retries also. So let me just show you what an actual command of nmap looks like. Now if you see the chat, right, that's what, and that's how an nmap command looks like. Perfect. So what hyphen sc option is doing, it is actually picking up some random scripts, one or two general scripts from the database of nmap, and running it for the target as or according to the version of service which is running in the target, right? And then the last one is hyphen p hyphen, which we have given to scan all 65,535 ports, and all that output I'm saving in a file which is with the name fasttrack.xml. See, hyphen n we are using for blocking the DNS resolution, right? First thing, I'm solving a machine which is inside my local environment, right? And it's a vulnerable operating system. So I know that vulnerable operating system, it's not associated with any domain name, right? The default working of nmap says that you have to do what? You have to do the DNS lookup as well. You have to resolve the IP to domain name or domain name to IP. But if I have given the IP, there is no need to find out the domain name of that IP or domain name associated with that IP. So that's why I have blocked it using hyphen n option, right? Now, if I start the scan, you can see that it's giving me lots of open ports, right? And now it's running the scripts, some default scripts, right? Random ones. Now it will take some time uh, to get scanned, and it will give you the output. Let's see what output it gives. Now there is one question while the scanning is running, that it is showing that total number of ports it will scan 65535. Why not 65536? And which port it is scanning? Total ports. So I've heard there are a total of 65536 ports. Why 65535 only? Nmap does not scan port number 0 because port number 0 is a reserved port. Perfect. Now, if you see, this is the output. Now, in this output, for someone who is looking at this output for the very first time, it's very like a CLI base, so not very understandable, right? So let's do one thing. I've saved the output in an XML file. So what I will do, I've converted the file into HTML format. Let's be the normal user and let's open Firefox. Right now, this is a decent one, right? At the top, it is showing the IP address of the target machine, the MAC address, the total number of ports scanned but not shown are below in the closed state, right? Then what it shows, port number 21 TCP, it's open, right? The service running on that port is FTP. The reason that it is saying that port is open because the port replied back with SYNAC. So when my Kali Linux sent a SYN flag, a synchronization flag, so the target port 21, the port 21 of the target machine replied back with synchronization and acknowledgement, right? The product, or we can say the service version is VSFTPD 2.3.4, right? And -sc option that you used, that -sc option executed two scripts. One is ftp anon, which says anonymous ftp login is allowed, and ftp syst, which will give you the statistics, the stats of the ftp server running in the target machine. So it says connected to this, the IP of my Kali Linux machine. No session bandwidth, session timeout seconds is 300, right? And control connection is plain text, data connection will be in plain text. And VSFTPD 2.3.4. So from here, you got to know the exact service version of FTP which is running. Perfect. Now, what we are gonna do, it says that anonymous FTP login is allowed. So here, I will just directly try to connect to the target machine, right? And anonymous FTP login allowed means that you can log in with anonymous as the username and password, right? Now, when I entered the username as anonymous, right, and enter the password as anonymous, so it says login successful. Does that mean I hacked inside the machine? If I do ls, it say here comes the directory listing, directory send okay, but it is not showing any directories inside. It's not allowing me to execute any commands, right? That means it is of no use, right? I was just connected, but I was not having any data. It was not giving showing me any directories, any files inside, right? So it's of no use to us, right? Now next, what we can do, the next thing that we can do is we can try to exploit any vulnerability in the exact service version of FTP. We know the service version, right? VSFTPD and 2.3.4. So what we can do is I can start the Metasploit framework first, right? Now the Metasploit framework will be started. Now my Metasploit framework is started, right? Now what you have to do is you have to search for the thing you want, right? And your search should be exact, right? So let's say I'm the one who is starting with Metasploit framework for the very first time, and I know that the service running is FTP, and I quickly wrote search and FTP, right? And type is exploit. Let's say I want to find out the thing which is whose type is exploit. So I got 111 types or 111 exploits of FTP. Now these exploits can be in different versions. These vulnerabilities can be in the different versions of FTP. So that's why we have to be specific, and that's why during the Nmap scan we found the exact service version. So you have to be specific. You have to write VSFTPD 2.3.4 and type is exploit. What you got? You got the exploit of version VSFTPD 2.3.4. In the description, it's written it's a backdoor, right? Now, when you want to use any exploit, so how you can use it? You can write either use and the index number of it, or you can write use and the whole name of the exploit, right? So we can use the index number. I will write use 0, and you can see the exploit, the prompt has been changed and I have picked up the exploit. Now this is the exploit code for whom you want to run it, the target machine, right? So I will write show options to check what are the things which we can use with this exploit module. And it says there is something with the name rhost. Rhost stands for remote host. That means the target machine. So think of it as let's say there is a online game where you have found a gun and you have picked up the gun, but for killing the opponent, or you want to kill the opponent, so what you have to do, you have to aim it towards the opponent, right? Here our opponent is the target machine, so we have to mention the target machines, that for this machine I want the exploit to be executed, right? So we have to give the value of the IP address of the target machine. So I will write set our host as the IP of the target machine, and then sorry, right? So our host is set. If I write show options again, so you will see after our host there is the IP of the target machine set. Now you don't have to do anything, you just have to do the exploit, and backdoor service has been spawned. UID 0, GID 0. In Linux, user, if your user ID is 0 and group ID is 0, that means you are the root user. And here you can see command shell session 1 open, right? If you do ls, yep, all done. These are all the folders inside the target machine, and you have the access of the target machine. You have exploited the vulnerability, you have hacked inside the target machine, and you have the access of it. Clear? So that's how you use Metasploit framework to do the exploitation and hack anything, right? Find out vulnerabilities and do the exploitation. So this was it for today, guys.